The signal arrived at Earth without warning. It slipped past old listening posts and new defense nets alike, weak and damaged, like a voice already tired of shouting. At first, no one believed it was real. Strange patterns filled the screens, broken images, long pauses of silence, and then words that did not belong to any known language. Yet the fear in the sound needed no translation. Deep beneath the surface of the planet, the United Earth Council gathered in a circular chamber of steel and glass. The room was quiet except for the low hum of machines. Flags from every region of Earth hung along the walls, faded by time and shared history. Humanity had fought itself for centuries before it learned how to stand together. Now it faced something new. Admiral Dakim stood near the center table, his hands resting on the smooth surface. His hair had gone gray during the border wars years earlier, but his eyes were steady. He had seen cities burn on Earth. He had heard screams through broken radios. The sound coming from the alien signal felt familiar in a way he did not like. The recording played again. A tall, thin alien figure appeared in the image, its shape blurred by damage. Behind it, fire filled the sky. Buildings collapsed in the distance. Smaller figures ran through smoke and falling debris. The alien spoke slowly, its voice shaking. "We are running out of time," a translator finally said, its voice flat. "They are erasing us. We have no ships left to fight them. No worlds left to flee to. You are the only ones who answered our calls. Please help us." The image cut out. The room stayed silent. Hannah Park broke the stillness. She was younger than most in the chamber, but her presence was strong. As Earth's lead diplomat, she had spent her life studying first contact laws and alien behavior models. None of those books prepared her for this moment. They did not threaten us, she said softly. They did not offer trade or power. They only asked to live. Around the table, council members shifted in their seats. Some avoided looking at the screen. Others stared at it as if it might come back to life. General Sejin Kwan leaned forward, his arms crossed. "We do not know who is attacking them. We do not know what this war will cost us." "That is true," Hannah replied. "But we do know what happens if we ignore them." Admiral Day nodded once. "We have seen this before," he said. "On Earth, when help comes too late." The council ordered full analysis. Scientists, linguists, and military planners worked without sleep. Within days, the picture became clearer. The attackers were not raiders or pirates. They were an empire that moved slowly but crushed everything in its path. It did not negotiate. It did not occupy. It destroyed and moved on. The alien coalition had fought for decades. One by one, their worlds fell. In a research station above Earth, Mara Choi watched the data scroll past her screens. She was a weapons scientist, but she had once wanted to be a teacher. As a child, she had believed knowledge could solve anything. Now she knew knowledge also created terrible tools. "These weapons," she whispered, "they are not using fear. They are using certainty." Her assistant looked uneasy. "Can we stop them?" Myra did not answer right away. She thought of locked vaults beneath Earth, of projects hidden even from all eyes. Humanity had built them after almost losing its own world. "Yes," she said at last. "But once we begin, we cannot pretend we are the same as before." In the fleet yards orbiting Mars, ships began to move. Massive frames slid along rails. Armor plates locked into place. Silent drones swarmed like insects, welding and scanning. Fleet Strategist Wan Lai watched it all from a command deck high above the red planet. "We are waking the giants," one officer said. Wan's face stayed calm. "No," he replied. "We are reminding them why they were built." Across Earth, people learned of the signal. At first, it was only a rumor. Then the council released the footage. Streets grew quiet as screens replayed burning skies and frightened faces that did not belong to humans. Some people were afraid. Some were angry. Many remembered stories passed down through families. Stories of times when Earth begged for help and no one answered. Admiral Day visited the memorial grounds outside the Capitol before the final vote. Names covered the stone walls, stretching farther than the eye could see. He stood there alone, hands clasped behind his back. "We will not be late again," he said to no one. The council vote was not quick. It was not easy. But it was clear. Humanity would respond, not with a token fleet, not with warnings or limited strikes. They would respond with full commitment. Hannah Park drafted the message that would be sent back through the damaged channel. She chose her words carefully, keeping them simple so they could be understood. "You are not alone," the message said. "We are coming." When the signal was sent, there was no cheering, no applause. Only a shared understanding that the line had been crossed not far beyond human space. On a world already half in ruins, alien leaders watched the human reply appear on their final working screen. They did not know much about humanity, only that this species had listened. For the first time in many cycles, they allowed themselves to hope. On Earth, the fleets prepared to leave. Soldiers said quiet goodbyes. Engineers ran final checks. Generals studied star maps filled with red marks. Humanity was stepping into a war that was not its own. But history had taught them a hard lesson. When evil is allowed to grow, it does not stop on its own. And when humanity chose to fight, it never fought halfway. Humanity's past was not one of gentle lessons. It was written in fire, struggle, and survival. The story of Earth was carved from wars that had torn continents apart and plagues that had nearly emptied cities. From these hardships, humans had learned something important. Strength was necessary, but unity was stronger. That lesson would now be tested among the stars dot in a quiet command room aboard a massive orbiting station. Huan Li studied star maps flickering across his screens. Each point of light represented a planet or a fleet, but some were marked in red, indicating systems already fallen to the alien empire. The images told a story of destruction, but also one of opportunity. If humanity moved with speed and precision, entire enemy supply lines could be cut before they knew what was happening. Mira Choi joined him, her face calm but serious. "We have never faced an enemy like this," she said. "Their ships are strong, their tactics old but deadly. But we have something they do not: adaptability." Juan nodded. "And that is exactly why they will fail." While the military planned, scientists worked to upgrade every system. Weapons that had never been used outside of drills were tested and recalibrated. Armor was strengthened with new alloys, energy shields adjusted for maximum coverage, and AI-assisted drones programmed to learn in real time. Every part of the fleet was designed to fight as one, an extension of human will. Meanwhile, on Earth, people began to feel the stirrings of history. The streets were quiet in cities as news of the incoming war spread. Children watched screens showing burning alien cities, while parents whispered stories of human resilience. Schools held discussions about courage and responsibility. Earth was preparing, not just militarily, but mentally. Humanity understood that it was stepping into a role larger than any single person or nation. Admiral Dae Kim walked among the engineers in the fleet. Yards. He did not speak much, but his presence demanded attention. Workers respected him, not only because of his rank, but because of his reputation for calm decisiveness. Ships of incredible size and power gleamed under the lights, each one a promise of what humans could do when united. He stopped at a small fighter bay, where young pilots were running simulations. One of them, a woman named Su Min, looked up nervously. "Admiral, do you think we can really win?" Day smiled slightly. We are not here to hope. We are here to act. And humans have always acted when it mattered most. Even as they prepared, the first waves of refugees from the alien coalition began to arrive. Ships carrying families, children, and the wounded slipped through wormholes opened by early scouts. Medical teams, led by Yuna Kong, worked around the clock. Triage centers were set up on stations and planets alike. Yuna's hands moved quickly and confidently, but her mind could not ignore the stories she heard. They burned our cities, whispered an alien child, its voice trembling. Our people? They left nothing. Yuna held its small hand. We will not let that happen again, she said softly. Hana Park met with coalition leaders, her translator running continuously. She had learned to listen more than she spoke, understanding that the fear in their eyes was the same as that in humans past. These beings had seen their homes destroyed and knew that if they failed, they would vanish completely. They trust you, one leader said, his voice hoarse. Why do you care? Hannah looked at him, and for a moment, she remembered the stories of Earth, how entire villages had been abandoned when neighbors turned away. Because we remember what it is to have nowhere to turn, she replied. As the fleets finished their final preparations, the reality of the coming war weighed on every commander and soldier. Training simulations had prepared them for strategy, for maneuvering, for weaponry. But no simulation could prepare a human for the sight of so much suffering, for the knowledge that failure meant extinction for the innocent. Admiral Day called a meeting of his top officers. They gathered around a large holographic table projecting the galaxy in full color. Red marks indicated enemy positions, blue marks represented human fleets, and small clusters of green were the refugee worlds. We strike not because we want conquest, Day said, his voice steady, but because we must. If we allow this empire to continue, it will erase more worlds, more lives. Our strength is not for show, it is a shield for the helpless. Huan Li traced a path across the map. We hit their supply lines first, then their communication hubs. They expect a single attack, but we can hit multiple systems at once. Speed and coordination will be our advantage. Myra Choi added, our adaptive drones and AI-controlled ships will allow us to respond faster than they can. We can outthink them before they even know we are here. Hannah Park looked at them all, her voice quiet but firm. Remember, the eyes of the galaxy are on us. Our actions will not only save these people, but also send a message. Cruelty is not stronger than unity. The preparations were complete. On every planet, station, and ship, humans checked systems, calibrated weapons, and studied enemy data. Pilots ran through their flight patterns. Soldiers reviewed boarding procedures. And medical teams stocked supplies. At night, when most were asleep, Admiral Day walked alone through the empty corridors of his flagship. He looked out at the stars and thought of Earth's past wars, of cities burned and nations lost. He remembered the words of his father. Asterisk strength is not for the strong, but for those who choose to protect. Asterisk, he whispered it under his breath, a vow to himself and to the galaxy. Humanity would not fail. Not this time. And far away, on a world nearly destroyed, the aliens waited. They had little hope left, yet the sight of human ships emerging from hyperspace lit a spark in their hearts. For centuries, they had been hunted, erased, and forgotten. Now, a new force had arrived. The stage was set. The lessons of Earth, hard and unforgiving, had prepared humanity for this moment. The war ahead would test every skill, every strategy, every ounce of courage. But if humans had learned one thing from their own history, it was this. When the helpless call, humanity responds. Not with hesitation, not with partial aid, but with everything they have. And so, as the fleets powered up and the stars waited in silent witness, humans remembered the promise they had made to themselves, to their allies, and to history itself. The galaxy had begged for help, and humanity was ready to answer, not with caution, but with total commitment. The future was uncertain, the danger immense, but humanity's resolve had never been stronger. The human fleets emerged from hyperspace, like a river of steel flowing into the dark void. Stars reflected off the polished hulls, and the hum of engines filled the emptiness between them. The alien empire had not expected this. They had not expected speed, precision, or coordination of such magnitude. Humanity did not negotiate. Humanity did not hesitate. Humanity struck. Captain Tyke Rue led the first wave. His ship, a sleek fighter carrier, cut through enemy lines, guided by algorithms created for adaptability and fast response. Sensors detected weak points in the enemy fleet's formation, points that older empires might have overlooked. Tyke's orders were simple: disable, disrupt, and protect the fleeing civilians. Behind him, larger human ships carried their own fleets of smaller fighters and drones. Each unit moved as if connected to one mind. Every maneuver, every volley of energy fire was timed to perfection. The enemy scrambled, unprepared for such coordinated aggression. On a nearby world, the alien coalition watched from hiding. Their eyes were wide with disbelief. Their cities, once smoldering ruins, now glimpsed rescue fleets arriving like shining giants. Families hugged, children cried, and the oldest leaders whispered words of hope they had long forgotten. Hana Park coordinated with the coalition leaders, using rapid translations and hand signals. She had learned to communicate without words, and the aliens sensed her determination. "Stay close to our forces," she instructed. "Follow our paths, and you will live." Meanwhile, Admiral Dae Kim oversaw the entire operation from the flagship. Multiple systems were under his watchful eyes, and he relayed orders with the calm of a man who had seen the worst and refused to yield. Every strategy was a reflection of humanity's understanding of war. Act decisively, strike efficiently, and minimize the loss of innocent life whenever possible. The first clashes were brief but intense. Enemy ships fired relentlessly, but human shields absorbed energy bursts. Adaptive drones redirected attacks, and coordinated counterfire neutralized threats. Within hours, entire enemy supply lines were crippled, communication hubs destroyed, and command centers destabilized. The alien empire's confidence, once unshakable, began to waver. On a liberated planet, survivors emerged from hiding. Small groups wandered through ruined streets, watching human drones repair damaged power grids and set up medical stations. Children laughed, not out of ignorance, but because hope had returned. Soldiers, moving quietly among the people, handed out food and comfort, showing that humanity's war was measured and just. Captain Tyke Rue engaged in his first direct confrontation with the enemy fleet's flagship. The alien ship was massive, bristling with weapons and shields, and it moved with deadly precision. Yet Tyke's human ingenuity turned the battlefield. His fighters used diversion tactics, while drones infiltrated the enemy ship's systems, turning its weapons against it. Explosions lit the void like fireworks, but each strike was calculated, meant to disable rather than annihilate unnecessarily. Mira Choi monitored the battle from the weapons station. She adjusted targeting parameters in real time, her fingers dancing across the controls. "Remember, we are here to protect lives, not destroy worlds," she reminded the team. "Every shot must have purpose." The enemy commander, a tall figure with metallic augmentations, could not believe the human approach. They expected fear, panic, or chaos. Instead, they saw strategy, precision, and an unwavering will. The humans did not attack out of anger. They attacked out of necessity and responsibility. And that made them more dangerous than any rage-fueled fleet. Across multiple star systems, the same pattern repeated. Human ships struck fast, coordinated perfectly, and withdrew only when objectives were complete. Supply lines, factories, and weapon depots were neutralized. Enemy soldiers surrendered when faced with humans who did not gloat or threaten, only gave them a choice: leave or be stopped. On Earth, families watched news feeds showing alien cities being freed. Children cheered, adults wept. The council and media carefully selected messages to remind humans and allies alike that war, even for a just cause, was a burden. Humanity's strength was not cruelty, it was responsibility. Medical officer Yuna Kong worked tirelessly. She moved between ships and stations, treating wounded humans and aliens alike. Her hands were steady, her voice soft. She saw the fear in the eyes of those who had lost everything, and she held them close, whispered assurances, and gave them the first taste of safety they had known in years. Hannah Park continued diplomatic efforts even in the heat of war. She negotiated temporary safe zones and transport corridors for refugees, using the confidence humans inspired to gain cooperation from those who had once been hesitant. Slowly, trust began to rebuild in small, careful ways. The enemy fleet, battered and demoralized, attempted a counterattack. They concentrated all remaining forces on a single human battle group, hoping to break through and strike back at the coalition. But human strategy anticipated this. Decoy formations, electronic interference, and rapid response units neutralized the attack before it began. In the end, the enemy fleet retreated. Confused and broken, Captain Taik Ru, though exhausted, smiled quietly. "They underestimated us," he said to his co-pilot. "They always do." Admiral Dae Kim, watching the final reports, allowed himself a moment to breathe. The first wave of total war was over. Thousands of enemy ships had been neutralized, hundreds of worlds secured, and countless lives saved. But he knew this was only the beginning. The Empire still existed, scattered and desperate, and humanity would need to strike again to ensure the war ended for good. At the edge of liberated space, coalition leaders gathered with Hannah Park. Their eyes held gratitude, but also fear. They had been close to annihilation, and they understood that humanity's help came at great cost and with great strength. Hannah reminded them gently, "We do not fight to rule. We fight so that you may live. This is the way of humans. When the helpless call, we answer." Across the galaxy, the message spread. Civilizations long oppressed watched as humanity intervened decisively, showing that cruelty and domination would not go unchallenged. Humans did not conquer. Humans did not occupy. They acted with power and purpose, ensuring survival and justice. In the quiet moments after battle, soldiers reflected. Pilots cleaned their ships, engineers repaired systems, and medics tended the wounded. Each person understood that this was only the first step. Humanity had answered the call, but the war was far from over. The next wave would test their limits, their endurance, and their morality. Admiral Day stood at the observation deck of the flagship, looking out at the stars. Each point of light held a story, a life, or a civilization. He thought of Earth, of battles fought and lessons learned, and of the alien worlds now breathing easier because humans had chosen to act. The weight of responsibility was heavy, but he carried it without fear. The galaxy was watching. The alien empire was reeling. And humanity, once confined to its fragile home, had shown that it could be a force of protection, justice, and unyielding will. The first wave of total war had ended, but the story was far from complete. Humanity's presence in the galaxy was no longer uncertain. They had responded with precision, with strength, and with mercy when possible. And in doing so, they had shown what it truly meant to be human. The war had reached a quiet, uneasy pause. Human ships floated between systems, scanning for enemy remnants, repairing damage, and assisting refugee worlds. The first victories had been dramatic, but they left a heavy weight behind. Soldiers, engineers, and medics saw the aftermath of centuries-long oppression in the eyes of those they saved. Entire civilizations had been nearly erased, and even the smallest human effort could not bring back what had been lost. Medical Officer Yuna Kong moved between relief stations, her hands steady, but her mind heavy. She treated injuries and illnesses, but she also listened to stories of suffering. A family had lost 3 generations to the Empire's attacks. A child, barely able to speak, held tightly to a human volunteer, seeking comfort. Yuna did everything she could, but she knew the cost of war went far beyond wounds and burns. Hana Park met with coalition leaders on a temporary base, carved from abandoned structures on a recently liberated world. They were exhausted but alive, and their eyes reflected both relief and grief. Hana tried to offer hope while respecting the reality they faced. "We are not here to erase your history or your pain," she said. "We are here to ensure your future exists." Admiral Dae Kim convened a council of his senior officers to assess the next steps. Despite recent victories, he knew the enemy had not yet surrendered. Humanity had shown strength, but the Empire's remnants were cunning and desperate. A single misstep could prolong the war and cost thousands more lives. "We cannot stop," Dae said quietly, looking around the table. "They will rebuild if we allow them to. Every strike we make must be precise. Every decision we take must protect the innocent first." Huan Li outlined a plan to track scattered enemy fleets and isolate them before they could regroup. Myra Choi prepared specialized units, weapons designed to disable rather than destroy, targeting command centers and supply depots. The goal was not to conquer, but to prevent the Empire from ever threatening lives again. Even as strategies were laid out, soldiers faced the psychological toll of war. Captain Taik Ru walked the corridors of his ship, checking on his pilots. Many were young, many had never faced battle before, and all had seen horrors they could not unsee. Taik reminded them of their purpose: protection, not vengeance. "We are here to save lives, not destroy," he said. "That is what makes us human." In the liberated cities, humans worked with alien engineers to rebuild infrastructure. Bridges were restored, power grids repaired, and basic medical supplies distributed. Children ran freely through streets that had been filled with smoke only days before. The sight gave hope, but also a stark reminder: the Empire had left deep scars that time alone could not heal. Hana Park negotiated safe passage for refugees to newly protected worlds. Even with humanity's help, many aliens feared that danger would return. Henne understood that fear, having grown up hearing stories of Earth's own past when neighbors turned away and no help came. "We are here now," she said repeatedly. "We will not abandon you." The enemy, though broken, did not surrender willingly. Small groups of their soldiers attempted hit-and-run attacks, hoping to reclaim territory or sabotage human operations. Each attack was met with precision countermeasures. Drones neutralized mines before they could explode. Adaptive shields deflected energy blasts. Human units moved swiftly, never underestimating their foe, yet always measured to minimize unnecessary death. One such encounter took place on the outskirts of a mining colony. Enemy ships tried to destroy fuel depots, critical to the survival of refugee populations. Captain Taik Ru led a small squadron, intercepting them in deep space. The battle was tense, the enemy unpredictable, but human coordination and determination prevailed. Enemy ships were disabled, and the fuel depots remained intact. The humans celebrated quietly, knowing the victory had saved lives without excess destruction. Admiral Dae Kim walked among his soldiers after the engagement. He observed exhaustion, weariness, but also quiet pride. Each person had faced choices that could have led to indiscriminate destruction, but had chosen restraint. Humanity's strength was not only in technology or tactics, but in the careful control of power. Meanwhile, medical teams continued their work. UNICAM held a small ceremony for children orphaned by the conflict, reading them stories of Earth and encouraging them to dream of a future free from fear. Even as the Empire fought to destroy hope, humans reminded them that hope could survive and even thrive under protection and care. The coalition leaders began to see a pattern in human behavior. They had feared power would be used for conquest. Instead, they saw strategy guided by ethics, efficiency guided by responsibility. Humans did not conquer. Humans did not occupy. Humans acted with purpose and left nothing more than protection behind. Hannah Park reflected on the lessons humanity had learned from Earth's long history. Wars had taught humans resilience, cooperation, and the understanding that true strength was not measured by fear imposed, but by protection offered. Now, those lessons were applied on a galactic scale, yet, even as hope spread, the cost of war remained visible. Entire worlds had been burned, cultural centers destroyed, lives lost. Humanity's intervention was decisive, but it did not erase suffering. Soldiers, medics, and diplomats carried the memories of these horrors, knowing that even victory required endurance, empathy, and responsibility. Admiral Day convened one final meeting before the next offensive. "We act with total commitment," he said, "not because we desire destruction, but because we choose protection. Let that guide every decision, every action, every strike." The fleets prepared to move again, this time to root out the remaining enemy forces. Soldiers packed supplies, pilots checked navigation, medics reviewed triage protocols. Across the galaxy, humans acted as one, a force tempered by experience, guided by ethics, and motivated by the protection of the innocent. On a liberated planet, children laughed as humans worked to repair schools and hospitals. Adults looked on, tears in their eyes, realizing that safety had returned, even if the shadow of the Empire still lingered. In every gesture, every action, humanity demonstrated that power could coexist with compassion. And so, even in the midst of total war, humans did not lose themselves. They fought with precision, protected the innocent, and reminded the galaxy that strength was a tool, not a weapon of cruelty. They were not conquerors. They were guardians. The cost of mercy was heavy, but humanity carried it willingly, knowing that the lives they saved were worth every effort, every sacrifice, and every burden borne in silence. The war had reached its final phase. Scattered enemy forces no longer held the confidence to regroup, their fleets reduced to fragments, and their command systems in chaos. Humanity had struck hard and with precision, dismantling the Empire's ability to wage war. Yet the galaxy remained quiet, holding its breath, as the consequences of total intervention settled over countless worlds. Admiral Day Kim stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking out at the stars. Systems once threatened were now under human protection, and survivors began the slow work of rebuilding. He felt the weight of responsibility pressing on him. Victory was not measured by the destruction of enemies alone, but by the lives preserved and the peace restored. Captain Tyke Rue oversaw the final clearing operations. His squadron moved through the last pockets of resistance, disabling remaining warships and securing communication hubs. Each encounter was brief and decisive. There was no room for hesitation. Yet every action was measured to minimize casualties among civilians who had been hiding in damaged systems. Hannah Park coordinated with coalition leaders to restore governance and order. Refugees returned to their homes, resources were distributed fairly, and infrastructure began to rebuild. There was a quiet sense of awe among the alien leaders. They had expected conquerors, yet found guardians. Humanity's power was tempered with mercy, and that balance left a lasting impression. Mira Choi monitored the deactivation of enemy systems. Autonomous drones moved with precision, dismantling weapons caches and rerouting control systems to prevent future attacks. Engineers from liberated worlds assisted, learning quickly from human technology and protocols. Myra noted that the lessons of war were now being shared, not hoarded, ensuring that no power could rise unchecked again. Medical Officer Yuna Kong continued her work, treating the wounded and comforting the survivors. Children, who had known only fear, now began to play in rebuilt parks. Families reunited, tears and laughter mixing as hope returned. Yuna's heart ached for the lives lost, but she found solace in every life saved, every small joy restored. Even as peace began to take root, the human forces did not linger for praise. Admiral Day ordered that fleets withdraw to designated stations, leaving behind defensive systems and infrastructure to protect liberated worlds. Humanity did not seek to dominate or occupy. Their goal had always been protection, and they honored that purpose. Hana Park addressed a gathering of coalition leaders for the final time. We came because you called for help. We acted because it was right. Our war is not for conquest, but to ensure no one is left defenseless. Remember this. Strength is only meaningful when used to protect, not destroy. The alien leaders nodded, understanding the depth of humanity's actions. For centuries, they had known only fear and subjugation. Now, they saw that a species could be powerful, yet compassionate, fierce, yet restrained. That realization shifted the balance of hope across multiple systems. Captain Taik Ru watched his pilots as they prepared for departure. Each young human had faced the realities of war, yet had acted with discipline and care. He felt pride in their courage, tempered by the knowledge of what had been endured. "We've done what was needed," he told his squadron. "Now it is time to let others live." Admiral Dae Kim walked through the corridors of his flagship one last time before returning to Earth. Soldiers and engineers saluted him, but he returned their gestures with quiet respect. Each individual had carried a heavy burden, yet acted without faltering. Their combined efforts had rewritten the story of the galaxy. In liberated cities, humans and aliens worked side by side, rebuilding homes, schools, and hospitals. Markets reopened, trade resumed, and communication networks restored. Children learned to read and play without fear. Music and laughter began to fill streets that had known only silence and smoke. Humanity's intervention had not erased the scars, but it had ensured that life could continue. Hana Park reflected on the events that had unfolded. The decision to act, the rapid deployment, the total war waged with discipline and restraint, it had all been necessary. The galaxy would remember. Not the destruction humans could bring, but the lives they chose to save and the systems they protected. Humanity had answered the call in a way that no one could have predicted. Admiral Dae Kim and his senior officers observed as the last enemy ships were neutralized or surrendered. Systems formerly under tyranny began to stabilize, and a new sense of order emerged. Humanity had not ruled. It had intervened with purpose, leaving a lasting legacy of protection and responsibility. Myra Choi watched as engineers from liberated worlds studied human technology. She realized that these lessons would prevent the rise of similar empires in the future. Humanity had not only defended, but had also empowered others to safeguard themselves. Knowledge had become a shield, as powerful as any weapon. Medical Officer Yuna Kong walked among the children, offering small gifts and words of comfort. Their laughter echoed through the corridors of hospitals and refugee centers. Though much had been lost, life had returned. Humanity's presence had restored the possibility of joy and hope. Hana Park, preparing to leave the final coalition meeting, left words that would echo across the galaxy. "This is what humans do," she said. "We fight when we must, but we act with care, with purpose, and with respect for life. You have seen our strength. You have seen our restraint. Remember both." As the human fleets withdrew, leaving behind defenses and infrastructure, the galaxy began to breathe freely. Systems once enslaved now governed themselves. Populations long oppressed rebuilt their communities. The message was clear. Humanity had arrived, and it would protect those who could not defend themselves. Admiral Day Kim looked out at the stars on the journey home. He knew the galaxy had witnessed something unique. Humans had acted decisively, with power and mercy, reshaping the course of countless lives. The burden of war had been heavy, but the result justified every sacrifice. Humanity had proven that true strength was measured not by what you could destroy, but by what you could save. Captain Tyke Rue returned to Earth with his squadron, carrying memories of battles fought and lives saved. The pilots understood that victory came with responsibility. They had seen what humans could do, and they carried the lesson forward. Strength and mercy could exist together. And when they did, they became a force unlike any other. Hannah Park prepared her final reports, detailing every action, every negotiation, and every life saved. Her words would serve as a record, not of conquest, but of protection. Humanity had not ruled. Humanity had not oppressed. Humanity had answered the call for help, and in doing so, it had changed the galaxy forever. And as Earth received its returning heroes, and alien worlds rebuilt with the guidance of humans, a new truth settled across the stars. Those who begged for help had been answered, and humanity had done more than respond. They had acted with total commitment, total strength, and total care. The galaxy would not forget, and those who preyed on the weak would remember the day humanity intervened with both power and mercy to protect all who could not protect themselves.